Miriam Sentinel Worm budget, please. Oh, Jogan buff XD. 5, 4, 4, 2. I'm not sure if the other numbers actually matter. We're just gonna call you Jugan? Jugan? Yeah, that one's probably gonna work. Anyway, we are very, very, very happy. I'm happy, specifically, because you've asked me to build one of my favorite commanders. A commander who I have had built since the day that he released, and I have enjoyed so much playing this boy. But I'm not going to build my version of the deck because, of course, I'm not running the budget version of the deck in my pack. There are some decks that I have both the budget version and the non-budget version available for people who need me to play lower power stuff when I'm playing in games. Miriam's not one of them, though, yet. But I am going to play an interesting Miriam build for y'all today. So for those who don't know, Miriam the Sentinel Worm is a Baldur's Gate commander. And I'm just going to go ahead and say every single card, every single Baldur's Gate commander is absolutely amazing. I adore so many of these. But Miriam Sentinel Worm has Flying and Ward 2, and anytime another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary, if that dragon would normally be legendary. Okay, so this card is so broken. This card is so absolutely busted that we are going to have to impose a very specific deck building restriction on ourselves today. To play Miriam Sentinel Worm the way we are going to do it today, we are going to play Miriam with no dragons. That's right. This is going to be dragonless Miriam. The only dragon that exists in the entire deck is going to be Miriam himself. So, let's talk about how we're going to be doing that today, and let's talk about the absolute, raw, unadulterated power that we will have access to in this deck. So first of all, we're playing a 6-mana commander, so we are going to need lots and lots of ramp. So let's talk about that section real quick, starting with God, I feel like a budget commander's quarters right now. And I guess because the decks I build are a little bit cheaper than his, I guess I literally would be a budget commander's quarters. Oh God, I'm sorry, Mitch. But he doesn't even know who I am. Wayfarer's Bauble. We can grab any basic land from our deck onto the battlefield tapped when we use this. Farhaven Elf for 3 mana, we can get the same thing. Any basic land from our deck on the battlefield tapped. Growth Spasm can do that too, but it can also make an 0/1 colorless Eldrazi that can sack itself for a little bit of extra ramp. Search for Tomorrow can get any basic land on the battlefield untapped, while also being a very good turn 1 play we have access to while using its suspend ability. Then we have Dawn Trader Elk, which we can pay 2 mana and then get it on the board, pay 1 mana and sack it, get a basic land onto the battlefield tapped, and then we are good to go. Font of Fertility is just green Wayfarer's Bauble, otherwise it's the same card. Beanstalk Giant, search your library for a basic land, put it in the battlefield untapped, and then we can cast it later. We probably will never do that, though. Then we have Terramorph, search your library for a basic land, put it into the battlefield untapped, and then it has Rebound, so the next turn it will automatically get us another land. Then we have Honored Heirloom, add 1 mana of any color, and then we can also pay 2 mana to exile any card from anybody's graveyard, keeping the reanimation players honest. Since when was this card released? Oh God, Magic's releasing so much stuff lately. And then we have Dreamscape Artist. We can pay 3 mana and tap it to discard a card, sack a land, search your library for 2 basic lands, put them into the battlefield untapped, which is just great. And then we can go off to the races. But that's not the only way we are going to be ramping into our commander. We need more ways to get into him. So let's talk about our draw package, beginning with Growth Spiral. It draws us a card, and then we can put a land from our hand onto the battlefield. Eureka Moment draws us 2 cards, then it can put a land from our hand onto the battlefield. Urban Evolution, draw 3 cards, then put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Explore, draw a card, then put a land onto the battlefield. We have so many ways of getting lands onto the battlefield, and it's important to get them because we need our commander out as fast as humanly possible. Then we have Military Intelligence. If we attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. Distant Melody, choose a creature type, draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. But we're only running 1 dragon, so how could this card possibly be good for us? I guess we'll talk about that in a bit. Harmonize draws us 3 cards when you play it. Reconnaissance Mission draws us a card every time one of our creatures deals combat damage. Easy to do because our commander has flying. Kiora, the Behemoth Beckoner, can untap a permanent, which can give us a little bit of ramp, but also anytime a creature with power 4 or greater ETBs, we draw a card, and Garruk's Uprising does the same, while also giving our commander some much lauded trample. But, okay, why is that one card in the deck that lets us draw a card for every dragon we've got, basically? Why is that in here if we have no dragons in the deck? Well, I lied. So I didn't lie. There are no other dragons in the deck, but there are these 14 clones that will all be dragons. Now, this is where I have to talk about what Miriam's effect basically reads. So here's Vizier of Many Faces. ETB, it becomes a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except if it's embalmed, it gets a bunch of other abilities. That doesn't matter. What matters is it comes into the battlefield as a copy of Miriam, which would be a problem, right? Miriam says that it's a legendary, so why would we copy a legendary? Well, let's say Vizier copies Miriam. Vizier comes in as a non-token copy of Miriam. Miriam sees that and goes, oh, I'm going to make a token copy of that, but it's not legendary. Now you have 3 Miriams. Legendary rule happens. One of the Miriams has to die. That sucks, but now you have 2 Miriams. So now when you cast your next clone spell, like this Undercover Operative, you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature, except it enters with a shield counter. Not super relevant, but it is kind of cool to have a creature with ward and a shield counter. But then Miriam, instead of copying Miriam, we copy the Miriam token that's non-legendary. Now, both of our Miriams see Undercover Operative and create 2 extra Miriams. Now our field has 5 Miriams. So let's say we cast Clone. Now our field has 10 Miriams. No, it has 11. I can't count. Do you see what's happening here? We have 1 Miriam, but every single time we play another clone, the amount of Miriams on our board basically doubles. The math is a bit wonky, but it basically doubles. Vesuvian Shapeshifter ETBs as a copy of a creature when it ETBs or is turned face up. It's got a morph ability, not really relevant to what we're doing. Sakashima's Will can turn all of our creatures into a copy of a creature, but also it can steal a creature from an opponent as well. Mythos of Illuna lets us create a token copy of any permanent at all, so we can copy, say, one of our ramp spells. If green and red are played for that card as well, you can create a token copy of a permanent that also is a fight spell as well. Mercurial Pretender ETBs is a copy of any creature that also has the ability to put itself back in the hand. So we can cast Mercurial Pretender as a copy of Miriam, creating itself and Miriam. And then we kill the original Miriam. So now we've got non-legendary Miriam and Mercurial Pretender. Now we pay 4 mana to put Pretender in our hand and cast it again. Now we have more Miriams, and they're all non-legendary, and we can keep doing that over and over and over and over and over. Cephalid Face Taker can't be blocked. Comes in as a copy of Miriam. That's a 1/4. Mirror Image comes in as a copy of Miriam, and if you are playing this card, then you already know this is not the version of the card to be playing. This is the version that is played because you are playing a budget deck. But let's say that you are a connoisseur. Let's say that you are the correct kind of Magic the Gathering player. This is the printing that you would use instead. This is objectively the correct printing of Mirror Image, and if I ever see a printing that is not this one, I'm gonna have a hernia. This is the correct Mirror Image of all time. It just women with white hair, women who are paladins, and women who would probably ruin my entire life by being Golgari Necromancers. Just every single one of them are my type. That is 100% what I'm here for. Also, Meteor Golem with tits. We'll get into that in a bit, but this. Anyway, we're gonna stop ogling Mirror Image real quick. We're gonna go ahead and put her back to her original printing real quick, the one that does not cost $5 because it has boobies. Then we have Protean Raider, a 3 mana clone, ETBs as a clone of anything as long as you have attacked first. Then we have Stunt Double, another clone that has flash. Then we have Mirror Hall Mimic, a clone we can cast from the graveyard with its disturbed cost. That says at the beginning of upkeep, create a copy that is a copy of the enchanted creature. So we can enchant a non-legendary Miriam and then every turn get extra Miriams for free. Then we have Reflections of Litjara. We choose a creature type. Whenever we cast a spell of that type, we can copy that spell. So this card here only reads when we are casting creatures. So we are going to be casting extra shapeshifters. Stunt Double, Mirror Image, Protean Raider, they are all shapeshifters. Cephalod and Mirror Hall are not. Mercurial is a shapeshifter. Clone is a shapeshifter. Vesuvian's a shapeshifter. Undercover is a shapeshifter. Vizier is a shapeshifter. So Reflections is just going to create extra shapeshifters, so we will get more copies of shapeshifters every single time that we do that. And then we have Tomb of Horrors Adventure. I was going to shove the initiative in here somewhere. It's a deck that swings at people, so I was going to have the initiative. When you cast your second spell each turn, if you've completed a dungeon, copy the spell twice. If you haven't, copy the spell once. So we have Tomb of Horrors Adventure on the board. We create copies of our creatures that are coming in as clones, so we have more copies of our copies and copies. But let's say, for instance, that you're not satisfied with that. That's not enough for you. You want more copies. Okay, I've got you. Fine. Let's blink. Let's talk about blinking. So, note, Miriam doesn't say casting. Miriam says when it enters the battlefield. When a creature enters the battlefield, you create your clone tokens. So displace, exile 2 target creatures you control, and then put those cards back onto the battlefield at instant speed. We play this on Miriam and an actual clone. Then they both come down. The clone gets to be copied off of the non-legendary token Miriam's already created, and then we create an extra clone off of that, and then Miriam comes down, and we create an extra clone off of that. We make so many clones when you do stuff like this. It's insane. Do this at the end of an opponent's turn so that you have these creatures ready without haste, and just slam somebody in the face for a ton of damage with dragons. Ghostly Flicker does the same thing. Illusionist Stratagem does it as well with a draw attached to it. Siren's Ruse is a 2-mana blink spell. Void Walk is a 4-mana blink spell, but it has Cipher, so we can attach it to any of our Miriams. Every time it swings, we will get that blink ability again. Then we have Planar Incision. It's a 2-mana blink. Teferi's Time Twist and Blur are both 2- and 3-mana blinks. Blur lets you draw a card after you play it as well, which is really cool. These can help us dodge spot removal. These automatically create extra copies of our commander every time we use them. They are wonderful. And then we have this bastard child, this absolute troglodyte of a destructive being. This thing has no brain cell. It does one thing. When it does combat damage to a player, exile the creature you control, and then return to the battlefield under your control. Do you know what happens if you have clones of this on the board? We swing many Melidors at people. If you can get a non-budget version of this deck that has non-legendary cloning, just lots and lots of Melidors hitting people, blinking the commander for every single time, creating doubles of tokens for every single time it has punched somebody. It is absolutely nutso. Note, if you are hitting a bunch of people with a lot of Melidors, you have to choose Miriam and then subsequent clones that are not tokens in order to get those benefits. But still, this thing does a lot of work in the budget build. It goes nuts in the non-budget build. Him and Displacer Kitten together are menaces to society. But speaking of menacing, we need, not menace, we need a way to get our commander into people's faces very, very quickly. It's got flying, so it's already got evasion, but how are we going to blink and then also punch people in the nuts? Well, we have a bunch of haste enablers in the deck for that. So let's go ahead and talk about Hellraiser Goblin. Creatures you control have haste, but they are forced to attack each turn. Cyclops of Eternal Fury. All our creatures get haste. Tuk-Tut Robofort. All our creatures have haste. And Vishino Lashclaw. Discard a card to give all of our creatures haste. This way, our commander can punch multiple times and be very, very violent. But you remember how we had all those cards that said, blink 2 creatures at once? Let's talk about recursion real quick. Timeless Witness. If we blink Timeless Witness, God, I've talked about 2 blinked decks back to back. I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. But Timeless Witness, if we blink with one of our multi-blink spells. So say we cast Ghostly Flicker. We blink Miriam, getting our Miriam clones, and then of course we get the Timeless Witness back on the board because of the blink. And then Timeless Witness sees that the Ghostly Flicker's in the graveyard, getting the blink to our hand, and then we cast it again and again and again and again and again. And then we have so many dragons, and they've all got haste, and people just burn. Then we have Once in Future, get any target from our graveyard to the battle, not to the battlefield, to our hand. hand, but if we cast it with at least 3 green mana, then we get 2 cards. One goes to the top of the deck, one goes to the hand normally, but both go to our hand if we use the adamant ability of it. Then we have Flood of Recollection. Any instant or sorcery from our graveyard can then go to our hand, so we get our blink spells back. Now, let's talk about the part that everybody hates, the removal section, because when we run thick removal packages, we get thick wins. Let's start with Broken Wings. Blow up any artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. We use this to clear the way for Miriam to stomp on people's nuts. Then we have Cancel, Disruption Protocol, and Negate, all really, really good counter spells we have access to. Disruption Protocol is in here because we can do things like tap Meteor Golem to lower the cost of it. Cloning Meteor Golem is fun. Blinking Meteor Golem is fun. Do you know how much raw just damage people take just from psychic, like pure psychic damage? When you blink a Meteor Golem at them and they're like, that's that card from that one precon I removed because it was bad. Why is my field getting turned over and just ruined by him? Why does your version have tits? Because apparently I was informed by my lovely viewers there's a Meteor Golem with tits. So now that I know there's a Meteor Golem with tits, I want her to step on me. That's where I'm at in my life. I know what I like, and I'm confident in that. You should be too. Do better, be happy. Choose happiness. Now we have Snapback. Exile a blue card from our hand rather than paying its cost. If we choose to return any creature to its owner's hand, we can use this in a pinch to clear the way or protect us from something like an infinite combo, or we can use it to put Miriam in our hand and recast it to get lots more clones. Then we have Return to Nature, blow up an artifact, enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard. Decisive Denial can counter any non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3, or it's a fight card. We can use this so Miriam can punk somebody in the butt. Rex Sage can blow up any artifact or enchantment when it eats ETBs. A Braid deals 3 damage to a thing or blows up an artifact. Raven Form can exile an artifact or a creature. Resculpt can exile an artifact or a creature. Also, Raven Form can be blinked in case we need to get different cards. Oh no, sorry. I'm thinking of Imprison on the Moon right now, not Raven Form. Sorry, you can't blink Raven Form. I'm lying to you. I am 100% lying to you. You can't do that. But that is how we're going to clear the way to make sure that we do not lose a lot of games by not running removal. Responsible players run removal. But let's move into the land base, starting with dual lands. These are lands that can tap for at least 2 kinds of mana. Cinderglade is a wonderful card to run in any deck that has access to it because it is a mountain forest, so things like Wood Elves can grab it. Frostboil Snarl, Game Trail, and Vine Glimmer Snarl are all reveal lands. These are awkward because if you're playing a low power deck, these are super good because you have access to tons of typed lands because they're all basics. If you're playing a mid power deck, these are now bad because when you're playing in mid-power mana bases, now suddenly you have a lot of dual lands that are not typed. And then when you're playing a super high-power deck, these are good again, because now you have a ton of typed lands like Shocklands and Triomes. Either way. Then we have Mossfire Valley as a filter land, and then 1, 2, 3 thriving lands, because they can give us any of the mana that we want. One of the few times we will run types of tapped lands in decks. Then we have fetching lands. Promising Vein, Shire Terrace, and Naya Panorama all can get us lands from our deck onto the battlefield or be untapped lands if they need to be. Blighted Woodland and Myriad Landscape are lands that can also ramp us because they get 2 basic lands from our library onto the battlefield. And then Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds are both lands that can fetch anything from our deck. We're not running Escape Tunnel in here as well because we are already a little ahead of the budgetary restriction, which I'm not super thrilled about, but still. Then we have Exotic Orchard and Command Tower, the Omni lands of the deck, leaving us with finally 20 basic lands, 8 forests, 8 islands, and 4 mountains. And that is Miriam Sentinel Worm, a very, very powerful commander you can build a ton of ways, and we are building him as a dragonless tribal deck, specifically dragonless tribal or kindred or typo, whichever one makes people most angry in the comment section. I'll use all of them interchangeably. It will be okay. But now, here's the question. If you were to upgrade this deck, where would you go? Because obviously we are running a shoestring budget with it. 69-cent commander, $16 deck total, so like $15.50 for the deck. We're just a little ahead of what I normally like for these budgets. But if we are running the deck as a stronger, not stronger so much as a higher budget deck, then in the blinking section, we add things like Displacer Kitten and Conjurer's Closet and Thassa. These are all incredibly good recurring blink. We replace a lot of our one-time blink with recurring blink, especially the ones that only blink one creature. Replace those with recurring blink. As for clones, we can upgrade to things like Sakashima of 1,000 Faces and Spark Double, clones that come into play as non-legendary, so we don't lose the one creature that we already had. But you keep Mirror Image because, screw you, Mirror Image is hot when it has tits, and for some people it's hot when it doesn't. But then you would also make sure that your clone package had access to a Glasspool Mimic in the land section. We'll get more lands in a second, but just any clones you can shove in here that have a non-legendary clause. A Vesuvian Duplimancy would also do really well. Any of those are great. As for the draw package, going up on things like Temur Ascendancy and Tribute to the World Tree, Guardian Project, any of these cards that give you more access to the draw whenever you ETB is really, really important. But I would keep things like Growth Spile, Eureka Moment, Explore. All of these cards that give us lands as well help out a ton. As for Haste, I already said Temur Ascendancy would go in. Go ahead and remove high-cost hasty stuff like Cyclops of Eternal Fury and add in things like Rhythm of the Wild that give us access to 1/1 counters if we need it, and Haste if we need that instead. As for ramp, I would definitely go up, put an Arcane Signet in the deck, add in Nature's Lore, Farseek, all of those typed grabbing cards are all fantastic to put in the deck. Skyshroud Claim does a lot of work in a deck like this because the 4 mana we pay for it automatically gets us 2 lands, and that's what we need for our commander. Entis Restoration also does work in this deck, as it does the double ramp as well. Then, as far as recursion, I would put an Eternal Witness in here as well. I would go down on the Flood of Recollection. I would swap that for the Eternal Witness, because the blink is really good. As for removal and interaction, I'd go... cancel becomes things like Counterspell. Meteor Golem stays in. Most of this actually stays in, but if you want to thread in things like Pongify and Rapid Hybridization, add in Beast Within, those are all really good removal options to add in that will smooth this removal package out a lot. Broken Wings becomes Beast Within. Like, this is our budget Beast Within right now. As for the land base, removing the Thriving lands and adding in Shock lands and Pain lands does a lot of work in smoothing this deck out. Remember that the higher power you get your mana base, the more expensive your mana base is, the more awkward the spot of these cards are. The Glimmer Snarl, the Game Trail, the Frostboil Snarl. They're really good in the high basic land and the high type land versions, but if you have a lot of like Pain lands or Flip lands and stuff like that, go ahead and sub these out for things like the Snow lands. Slow lands like Stormcarved Coast. As for the fetching lands, I would keep most of this the same, except the Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse would leave, and they would become just pretty much anything else. And Arid Mesa is actually a decent option in here because it's not that expensive. Scalding Tarn is a little more expensive, but it's still doable in here. As for Omni lands, get a Triome. Put a Ketria Triome in here, put Type lands in here, and you're going to be off to the races. The new Surveil lands are probably the best tapped lands the deck would have access to, because just being able to curate your draw is really, really nice. But that said, that was Miriam Sentinel Worm, a just adorably strong commander that if you have not had a chance to play yet, please do so. This budget build clocks in at $16.22, with 69 of the cents being the dollar or less commander of Miriam. I highly recommend you give this man a shot. You've probably already dealt with somebody playing him at your local tables, and you've probably not liked the fact that they were playing him, but there's a reason he is as popular as he is. He is so fun. No matter how you build him, he is just amazingly fun. Please enjoy, and I hope you liked the unique take on him having 0 dragons, but still plenty of dragons. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Thank you, everybody who's almost got us to 3,000 subscribers. Thank you for everybody who's become channel members and have been able to see these decks early. And thank you for everybody who has subscribed to the Patreon as well and joined the Discord. But that all said, thank you all for watching, and insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here. And they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Nabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, Sagitta, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.